Welcome to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants, with me, Shelley Fishel of Tomorrow's VA, and Joe Brianti of JLB Business Consulting. Each week, we chat with amazing guest experts, all aimed at helping you grow your VA business. So sit back, grab a cuppa, and tune in for a fun-filled episode. Welcome, listeners, to this week's episode of Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants. Joe and I are thrilled to be back again. Today is January. No, it's not January anymore, isn't it? One month merges into the next. It's February. It's February the 18th as we record today, and this is the second episode we're recording this week, but it won't go out till sometime in March. And we're going to be interviewing another wonderful VA, although Alex is now a online business manager, isn't she?
Yes.
So that's coming up a little bit later. But first of all, we wanted to have a chat about something that's kind of top of mind at the moment. And that's with everybody working from home and running their business plus their home, which they would do normally. But a lot of people have got the added stress now of homeschooling, not being able to go anywhere, to get out of the house, to change direction, change environment, like go sit in a coffee shop for an hour and work, just to get a different vibe and more creative ideas. We can't see our friends and family. Well, I'll come on to what I can do now because things are changing here for us. But in the UK and a lot of Europe, you still can't go places. And that has a profound effect on how you feel. And some of the time we can kind of power through, and then all of a sudden it gets all too much and you kind of have a wobble, for want of a better word. And I think that's quite common. What do you think, Joe?
I totally agree. You and I talked earlier this week. I've had a really difficult wobble this week, and it is that I work from home all the time, just like many of us. Being my own doesn't faze me. The lack of the coffee shop, I'm starting to feel it, but there's all these other things that we are taking on at the moment. It's schooling, it's having perhaps your husband or your partner working from home at the same time, and in my case, I've just had an experience where my dad's been very seriously ill. I'm in London, he's in the north of England. It's very difficult when you're taking on more and more and more of this emotional load, and I've had a big wobble this week of coping with it, and I got to the point where I just couldn't power through. It's been hard, and I think all of us need to recognize that. And in my case, my advice and my tips and having the conversation with Shelley the other day was shut the door. I logged off, contacted my client, said I need an afternoon away. I went for a long walk by myself in the park with the dog, came back, good night's sleep, and I felt more refreshed, and better able to deal with those additional worries that are there. So it's very difficult, and we all need to recognize that and be kinder to ourselves, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, I totally resonate with that, because yes, I can also get I'm not homeschooling, and it's not quite so difficult for me in that respect, but my kids live all over the world, so I'm not seeing my children. I haven't met one of my grandchildren yet since he was born, and he's now coming up for 7 months old, and looks like I possibly won't see him till he's about 1, I suspect. But all that aside, there are days when it all gets too much, and the only thing I think you can do then is exactly what you did, Joe. It's just send out a message, put your out of office on, say I'm under the weather today, this afternoon, for the next day or so, and take yourself off for whatever it is, whether that's hide in your bedroom for an hour with a book or a puzzle in my case, or whatever it is that you want to do. But recognize and be kind to yourself, because if you don't look after yourself, you can't look after everybody else. It's just not possible.
You look after your business and you can't look after your clients if you're not looking after yourself. The phrase self-care is bandied around an awful lot, and you can feel a bit by it being, but really it's more about caring for yourself in order to continue caring for others. It's like when you're on an aeroplane, the first thing they do is say, if the oxygen mask comes down, you put your own on before you put your children's on, because you need to, look after yourself to look after them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But aside from all of that, what else have you been doing this week, Jo, now that you're back in the saddle, so to speak?
So I've been finishing a MailChimp project that a client started with me last year. They then put it on hold, made some changes. So we've been finishing that. And I've been working with my VA to sort some things out and to update some processes and some procedures in my business, and just tidying some things up that are, tying together loose ends on a few projects.
I think that helps as well, because when things are a mess, whatever mess is for you listeners, whatever mess is for you, maybe not what mess is for me, and so on. But whenever a person feels that there's messy stuff around, that can lead to overwhelm as well, because there's all these things all over the place. And sometimes just the process of putting things in place is helpful. Which reminds me, when my mother died, which is 30 something years ago now, it's a long time ago, I ended up with all the family photographs, and I had this big box of family photographs, and they were just in this big box. And the one thing I think that helped me more than anything else was putting them in photograph albums and trying to figure out who half the people were. But, aside from that, because we've all got those photos where we don't know who that great aunt, great person was. But putting them, making order from chaos does seem to help us make sense of what's going on. And when things are tidy, we feel a lot calmer and a lot better able to cope. But I think, I think we talked about all that stuff. Let's talk about more uplifting things. I mean, you're back on track and that you're able to get on with those projects. I'm about to sign a contract with Book Boon for 6 more books.
Ooh.
We've ironed out the contractual bits and pieces that we've been talking about. I've recorded tons of content for my PowerPoint course this week. Still got some to do, but for me, there's light at the end of the tunnel. I can see the end in sight, which is very exciting. And I'm about to create a mini flash bundle of some of my basic courses. I'm going to call it the Essential Office Bundle, and it's going to have in it the essential courses that you need. And I'm just kind of working through what that's going to look like and setting it all up in the background. And then I've got loads of virtual live training going on as well. So all very busy. All very busy. And restrictions here are lifting. So as of next week, children are starting to go back to school and shops are starting to open. It's being done in a gradual, phased way. So we can now travel around the country. The parks are open. They're going to be opening museums, and a lot of things are going to be open to people who have what's known as a green passport, which is basically a certificate that we get, which is actually green, from the government. So when you've had your second jab and you're a week after your second jab, which is when it's effective, then you can log on to this site and download your certificate. And then when you go to a museum or a restaurant or somewhere, you'll show that you've got your green certificate, and then you'll be able to go in. So that's
wonderful.
Yeah. So it's beginning to, we've got a festival next week. It's called Purim. It's one where people dress up in fancy dress and have parties. So that's been closed down. In that the religious parts of it can happen, but all the celebratory bits, normally there would be fancy dress parades and big parties. That's been shut down because obviously those kind of gatherings in the current climate are a bit dangerous. But you can have your family get together as long as you're not mixing with too many other people. So So it's better than it has been. And then, of course, next month, 4 weeks after that, we have Passover, and we're waiting to see whether the government decides that that's going to be as normal, or whether they're going to say, no, we're going to have a mini lockdown for that, which they might. Just depends on inoculation figures and things like that. So we'll see. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, I think.
I agree. I think things are moving in the right direction, and I'm always hesitant to say that because you could just never tell, can you? And I'm no expert, but definitely it feels like we're moving forward, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. Well, on that note, I think we should move forward ourselves and go and get Alex, so we can have a nice chat with her.
Yes.
See you in a minute, listeners. Welcome back, listeners. And the wonderful Alex Hughes has joined us. So before I launch and ask all my myriad of questions, and I'm sure Joe's got some too, Alex, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell them who you are and what you do?
Yes, morning, Joe. Morning, Shelley. Thank you so much for having me on your virtually amazing podcast. Been looking forward to this. Yes, so for listeners, my name is Alex Hughes. I run a business called, well, it's now called Auxilium Business Consulting. It was called Auxilium Admin, and I'm based in Kingston upon Thames. I've been running my business for about 3 years, and I look after overwhelmed and busy CEOs and business owners where they need to outsource tasks to a safe pair of hands. And we chat and I work along with them.
Fantastic. So what does that entail?
Okay, so entails a lot of things actually before I've even got to the point of getting to business with someone, but it's a lot of communication and a lot of chat and a lot of finding out exactly what people want, because when people come to our virtual assistant world, they're generally in a case of overwhelm and sometimes they know what they want and sometimes they don't. So I tend to sit and have a long chat with them about the things that are troubling them, things that are working well as well, and things they want to change and things that they want to outsource. So I spend an awful lot of time trying to discover what it is they really want. And sometimes it's things that they hadn't thought of.
Yes, I know that from training, that often people in an organization, the training manager or person will come to me and say, we need to teach them how to do X. And then when you ask a few more questions, you realize it's actually Y that they need. So
yeah, exactly.
I totally understand that. It's not necessarily what they want, it's what they need that you have to give them. So you are now, when we first met, listeners, just background, Alex is one of my first students and she bought my book and we met up at the PA show in the snow. Was it the day it snowed?
Yes, it was.
The day? Yes, that was when I wrote a book about Excel and I carted off 50 copies with me to the PA show at the time, to Excel, and or was it Olympia, wherever it was. And I was hoping to see lots of people and sell lots of books. And of course it snowed and nobody came. Well, it felt like nobody came, but Alex came. But Alex had already bought the book, so I signed her book. That was, I think I sold one more book that whole day or something. But anyway, it was a real pleasure to meet you then. And then you took some of my courses. So when you started, you were Auxilium admin, and now you're Auxilium Business Consulting. So what does that mean, being a business consulting as opposed to admin?
Okay, so I'll take you back. So when I first started, obviously we all start out in the VA world and we give ourselves a business name. I'll give you a background as to why it was Auxilium. I used to work for furniture manufacturers as an office manager, and then company name was 2 Latin words. So I decided that whatever I was going to call it was going to be a Latin word. Then I thought it must be beginning with A. So I trawled lots of different places to find it, and I came up with Auxilium because it means to aid, assist and support. And then I quite like the AA bit, Auxilium admin, because that's what I was doing. But over time, and over the last 3 years, I've kind of become more of someone's second brain or business partner, and doing more sort of consulting work on a longer term basis and looking at not just the one project they give me, but on a longer term basis to see how we can move the business forward and maybe integrate other things or bring new services in or new systems. And so therefore, really calling myself Auxilium Admin didn't showcase or didn't explain to people what I did. So I had a long think about it, and it became Auxilium Business Consulting. And what I should have is a strap line that says as easy as ABC. But that's not my strap line. My strap line is lifeboat in a crisis and a lighthouse showing you the way.
So
That's where that comes from.
Fantastic. So you're, are you, so would that, does that mean you're more about the big picture?
Yes. So, yes. So basically, I do a lot of audits. So I tend to look at the whole business. And that stems from being an office manager of the furniture manufacturers, where I was involved in everything. So HR, health and safety, finance, sales, CRMs, accreditations, all sorts of things like that. So you are looking at the bigger picture and you're breaking down all those elements. So you're looking at it top down as well as bottom up, and making sure everything fits together. So I always look at admin as the central core of any business, and that one needs to turn in conjunction with all the others, and then everything turns nicely. I think people look at admin as a separate thing, but actually it touches every single thing that you do, and it needs to be at the central heart of your business.
Yeah, I think you're right, because if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing on any given day, it all falls apart, doesn't it? So yeah.
Yes. So I spend an awful lot of time with clients looking at all those separate areas and analysing them and working out, you know, in some cases things work well, and so therefore you should leave it, but there's some things that aren't working well, so we kind of unravel all those, and then we look at areas that they need to add in and work with those together.
That's brilliant. So we've talked over the weeks a lot about pricing models and different ways of working. So are you an hourly rate? Are you a project rate? Are you a package rate, or are you a mixture depending on what needs to be at that precise client's business?
With the audits, it's a set price, but it does have a tiered approach depending on how big the business is. If it's a project, we sort of talk about what's involved, and it might be a one-off price, or if it's just ad hoc bits, it might be hourly rates. But generally, I'm looking to do the audits, so that's a tiered approach. So I have a mixture depending on what I'm doing with the client.
That's great. Jo, have you got any comments, questions so far?
I've sort of watched Alex's journey and her evolution, and it's interesting because we've both sort of gone through that same journey, in that some of the things that we started out doing we're not doing, and we've moved over, and you know there's lots of different things that prompt that move. It's not just that one light moment. Did you find that it's not that one thing, it's a little bit here and there just leads you to this, I'm changing, business is changing?
Yes, I mean, for me, it was after doing an awful lot of networking, and obviously seeing a lot of other VAs, and everybody does all sorts of different things, and thinking to myself, really, what a lot of people had actually also said to me, don't call yourself a VA because it's not showcasing what you actually can do and all your expertise. And I kind of ignored it initially. And then I thought to myself, do you know what? People are absolutely right. Especially when somebody came to me one day and said, oh, now you're that bookkeeper, aren't you? I was like, no, nothing wrong with bookkeepers. I've got lots of friends who are bookkeepers, but that's not what I did. So the point about it is the way I was conveying it, and what I was trying to get across was a little bit blurred. And I think when you call yourself a virtual assistant, it is a very grey area, and you do have to be very specific about how you can help people and what you do for people. And therefore, over time, I kind of niched down into what I really enjoyed doing, and the passion was to go through everything that admin touches and provide the audits, which I haven't found many people do.
Yeah, that's really good. So you've really carved out a super niche. And it's interesting, one of the trainers in my trainer community is, I can't remember which kind of training it is. I think it's some sales and leadership, around sales and leadership. And he was very general. And then he found that he was running courses in the farming industry. And finally, he's niched down even further, and he only works with dairy farmers. And he's busier than he's ever been because he is known as the person to work with these dairy farmers. So all the dairy farmers, if they need any help, they just go to Paul. And it just makes it easier for your clients to find you if they know who you are and what you stand for. So that's definitely a good thing. So it's a cumulative process. Yeah. Okay. So Alex, have you got any wisdom you can share with our listeners about when they set themselves up and what what they could do, a couple of tips, things that they can think about.
Yeah, sure. I thought you'd ask me this question, so I kind of wrote a few things down, Shelley.
Oh, look at this.
As a proper admin person, always.
And I might have some bonus ones, you never know.
Yeah.
Well, my first tip really when you're starting out is not to get FOMO. So go at your own pace. When I started, I joined an awful lot of groups, and I'm sure, Joe, you did the same.
Yeah.
I read all I could, and I attended everything I could, and I went to conferences until one day I got slight overwhelmed, thinking, oh gosh, I'm in so many groups, I don't really know what to do. So you really got to eventually decide what fits with what you're doing and what you enjoy doing. One key thing, and I'm sure Jo will also agree with me on this because I've met her networking many times, is to network your socks off.
Yes.
But you've got to enjoy it. It's got to be consistent. It's a slow burn. You've got to give. I read the book by Bob Berg and David John Mann, whichever way around it is, called The Go Giver. And that made a huge difference to me about what you do in giving, and then it will come back to you. And the most important thing I think you need is a system when you're networking. So I have a personal system about how I do it, my 60 seconds, mixing it up, doing lots of research, finding out about people afterwards, looking at their industries and all things like that. So networking is huge. It's a huge part of what I do, and it's very, very important. And then that leads on to things like having walking ambassadors. I love that phrase. Ooh. So these are the people who tell other people what you do on your behalf, and how you help people and the benefits of what you do. And if they know what you do, telling people what you do, on your behalf is so much easier. So they network in their sphere of influence. So we network in ours, and then they network in theirs, and so on and so forth. And then, you think about how many people they can touch. So, making sure other people really understand what you do is absolutely key. And I've also found recently during COVID as well, having collaborations. I mean, you're one example of a successful collaboration between the two of you that's really worked.
Yeah.
Go on radio, go on podcasts, and do Instagram lives, do guest blogs, go to workshops, do workshops and talks and webinars. And, join Clubhouse. I've only just joined it recently, but, there's lots of interesting things on there, and you might be able to collaborate with somebody there. And then people see you as a go-to person and an expert. So that's really, really important. And I think most importantly, and it's come to me over the last year or so, is believe in yourself. Yeah. So prime your mind that you can do this, you are capable, and actually you are the right person. And I've recently done this, as I said, when I've changed my business from Auxilium Admin to Auxilium Business Consulting. And basically I walked tall, I had a vision, and I'm going with it basically. So I think you have to, have the right mindset for all these things as well. It's really, really important. Yes, we have our down days when we think, oh, something's going wrong, or can I do this or whatever, but it's visualizing that and making sure that you push yourself forward. So that's what I would say. And also I think talking about affirmations, I think a lot of people do this, and I've started doing it recently, about what did I enjoy about today, what did I achieve, what was I proud of, and these things at the end of the day really spur you on for the next day. So I think they're really important things to do.
I think that's a cool one. I used to do that actually. Training company I used to work for, at the end of every course, there was a section in the days of paper evaluation forms for the delegates to fill in. There was a summary one for the trainer, and the trainer would fill in a section of what went well, what could I have done better, how can I improve my delivery next time. And I think that's actually, I'd forgotten about that. So thank you for reminding me about that. I think that's a really good idea, and starting the day with gratitude or ending with gratitude is definitely a good habit to get into, because it makes you grateful for what you have. It makes you feel better. I think we could all do with feeling better, couldn't we?
Yeah, no, definitely.
Definitely. And also over the weeks of the podcast so far, and we're up to week 40 something now. I haven't got my spreadsheet open, so I don't know which week it is, but I think it's week 44 or 5 or even 46, who knows. And I think it's come up a lot how key networking is, and how important that is for building those relationships. And it's exactly what you said. It's not the people you meet, it's who they know and who they meet,
Yeah.
which is really important. Really,
Yeah.
really important. Joey,
Agree.
anything to add?
Agree. I mean, yeah, Alan and I bump each other on that, on sort of networking, because although there's some distance between us, but realistically it's that much. And networking is just huge. Never be afraid to go to a new network and be that new person in the room, and it's not quite as daunting as it might feel, and just talk to people. But my caveat on that is, don't go there to sell. Go there to find out about who is in the room, and don't automatically assume that because there's nobody in your niche that it's been a wasted couple of hours, because you never know who somebody knows. And that is the key thing with networking. And as an example of that, I had a conversation 2 or 3 years ago with somebody, coffee in one of these networking events I'd been to. I had an email from that person last week. Oh, by the way, are you still doing, and we had a catch up, and it turned out they've got somebody they can refer to me. And that's 2-3 years down the line. So never discount that event. And the other thing to think about is, if you go to these live events, like you might go to a live masterclass, obviously outside of the COVID world, but you go to these events where you're learning Excel or Outlook or bookkeeping or whatever. Use those as networking too. Yes, you're there to learn that skill, but there are other people in the room with you, and they might all be competitive, and they might just remember you, and then they give you in their business or their company or something else. So those would be my key network tips. And would you agree, Alex?
I would definitely agree. And I have one key example that happened to me. I was networking in person a few years ago, where we could. And I was talking to a lovely lady, and she was talking about her business, and she was doing blogs for the wellbeing sector. And we had a long chat about it and various other conversations. And we said goodbye, and that was it. And then about a month later, she called me and said, "Oh, I've referred you to my partner, and he really wants to give you a call because he thinks that you might be able to help him." So within a month, I was working for him. He was a software developer, and he's been one of my biggest clients ever since. So basically, that was networking through the room. She knew what I did. I didn't sell her my services. We talked about her business actually mainly, and how I could help her. And actually a month later, her partner came back to me, and I started working with him and have been ever since. So, that's just a keen example of how you can work through the room and not sell, but still get business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've mentioned it on many occasions that I can probably track most of my referral business back to one particular network that I joined in 2007. And I think I'm still getting work based on those referrals that I got back then, because they would refer me to John, and John would refer me to Jill, and Jill would refer me to Alex, and so on and so on and so on. So it definitely pays. And it's also about how you build those relationships and how you follow up and how helpful you are as well, because that's what people remember. I did a training course in September while I was in the States. I ran a Microsoft Teams training, funnily enough, for an L&D company. And one of the people on that course was on that. It was more of a webinar than it wasn't a hands-on, as much of a hands-on as I would have liked it to be, because just technically that's how it worked. And one of the people then went on to buy my Teams for Trainers course when I had it on a discount recently. And now she's taking that. We had a chat yesterday because she had a problem, so she asked me a question. And now she's going to recommend me into people that she is going into who are just adopting Teams, and they don't really know the first thing about what they're doing either. So it kind of all does filter through. And it's, I could have ignored the question she asked me yesterday because it was very technical and it actually wasn't part of my remit. It wasn't part of the kind of thing I would deal with. It was an IT support type question, which is not what I do, but I kind of knew the answer. So I answered it and directed her to the right answer. So that's hugely important as well. It's how you give, your go-giver.
Yeah.
There. I must get that book. I keep hearing
it's great.
It's brilliant. And Bob Berg is just such a really nice guy. Yeah.
You met
really
him?
nice guy. No, I've connected with him on social through another, interestingly enough, somebody I went networking with as a connection of his. And so I've met him, but I've been introduced via social. So he's now in my network, which is amazing.
Do you know what's amazing about that man is that if you mention him on a LinkedIn post, so for example, I've read this great book, and you tag him in, he replies and he comes back with a really personal message, says, thanks, Alex, and he's great. And I've done that a couple of times where it's been relevant, and I just think that's great, that someone has taken the time to do that. It's really important.
I always comment. If anybody comments on any of my posts, I always reply to those comments, because that's the whole point. It's not just about broadcasting, is it? It's about creating that feeling of a relationship with the people reading your stuff. And I am quite active on social media. I think, you both follow me, I know, and you both see the stuff. I put out a lot of stuff. But if people comment, I always respond, because if they've taken the time to leave a positive comment, you want to reply to that and say thank you. It makes you feel fuzzy and nice.
Yes.
The other thing I've done on my website, I just wanted to add, talking about networking and sort of collaborations, is I've got a page called My Little Black Book. Yes. And that's where I've met people. I think you're on there, Jo. And actually, Shelley, you're on there as well.
And every time I look at the stats, if I look at my website where stuff's coming from, it sends me traffic, Your Little Black Book. People do go and click it. So
it's got a whole wealth of information on it now, and it's going to be all divided up into subject areas so people can find things easily. And it's all about people I've met, worked with and know, so that I can actually, say, I know this person, they're great at X, Y, and Z, and please go and use them, and here's a discount code and what have you. And as you say, it drives traffic. But I also just feel it's great because these are the people that I've met, and I really know what they do and the services they offer.
Yeah, no, it's lovely to be able to recommend people as well. It's really, really nice. It's another warm, fuzzy feeling thing.
Yeah.
To warm fuzzy today, I need to feel warm. It's very cold here today. I've got a heater on in my office, which is because David, my husband, doesn't feel that cold like I do. And the rest of the apartment is really cold at the moment. So I'm in my office and I've got my heater on, so I'm okay. So that's quite good. That's quite good. Alex, it's been fascinating having this lovely chat with you today. I think we'll wrap it up. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners before we say ta-ta?
No, it's been lovely to speak to everyone. I thoroughly enjoy this industry. I think it's really collaborative. I've met both of you already, and I've actually really, really enjoyed listening to, I think, every single one of your podcasts, to be honest. And the reason I think it's really lovely is because I've met people and I know who these people are in the industry. And even yesterday I was listening to Daniel Skirmer's one.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've connected with him on LinkedIn. I joined the PA forum, which I didn't know about, and we've had a little chat. So, the power of your podcasts are quite immense. I love listening to them because there's just one thing about these types of podcasts is that we know people, what they do now, but we don't know what they did before. Yeah. In fact, I don't think I've told everyone what I did before, but it's very interesting to listen to some of these podcasts and find out what people's journey was, what they did before they do what they do now. And that's always quite an interesting journey to listen to.
Well, I've got to tell you, that's the most warm and fuzzy thing, because I had it's made me feel really, really nice. Thank you very much for saying that, because I wanted to start the podcast. It's my internet froze there for a moment. Sorry, folks, if it froze for everybody else. We seem to be having internet gremlins today because Joe's internet's been freezing as well. Yeah. So we apologise for that, but we've got no control. But no, that's made me feel so good. It's really nice when you start something to get that kind of feedback that it is helpful. And that's what I wanted. I wanted people to find out that we all see this hugely successful person that we think is hugely successful, but we don't see all the work that went in before that. It's that iceberg thing where you only see the tip. Or I was just editing next week's episode, which is with Lucy Brazier, which will have gone out by the time this airs, so you'll hear it. And she gave a great analogy there of the analogy of the duck with the feet underneath, and you see the duck, you don't see the feet. And she talked about the duck being the business owner or the director, and the assistants being the feet, keeping everything going. And I wanted everybody to see the feet effectively. So thank you for saying that. And on that note, I think before I gush anymore, we better wrap up. So listeners, thank you for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Welcome back, listeners. And it was such fun talking to Alex there. I haven't had a proper face-to-face chat with Alex for a while. We did have quite a few chats a while ago. And then what with everybody getting so busy, we haven't managed to carve out 5 minutes. So that was really nice to see Alex, wasn't it, Joe?
It's really nice to catch up with people we know really, really well. I network quite a bit with Alex because we live relatively close to each other. Obviously, it's all done on Zoom, but Alex runs the Southwest London VA network. So if there's anyone out there who wants to come along and sort of test their networking and get some tips, feel free to look us up on Facebook. And we also network in similar organizations local to us, so our paths cross fairly regularly.
That's really good. And we didn't mention that network in the interview, so it's good that you brought that up, and perhaps we'll add that to the page so that people can go and find you and join in networking with you, because as we are discussing week in, week out, it's really important.
And the thing is, with coming along to that network, it's a network of VAs. So if you've never networked before, if you're not very confident, come along, chat. Alex is always there. I'm there sometimes, not always, but there's a group of other very experienced VAs there, and come and network with us.
Yeah, I think that's really good, because also it will help you find people to collaborate with, because you get to know people, and then you build the know, like, and trust. And then when your client asks you for something that you don't really want to do, I won't say can't do, because most people can do most things, but we've talked a lot about niching into your zone of genius. And so it's important to have that network of people that you can approach and say, well, a client wants me to do this, but I really don't want to do it. Can you do it, please? So that's really helpful. I think today's episode was really, really fun. And networking seems to be the topic that rules everything. But I was also interested in Alex's, the way Alex has changed her business over years, and how she came up with her business name, I thought was quite fascinating.
Now that's really interesting.
I think I did know that, because I think when we had one of our chats, she told me how she came up with Auxilium. And I like the idea that she was looking for something that was A. So if you, in the olden days, when you used to look in the telephone book, it was important to have a business that began with the number 1 or the letter A, because then you were at the top of the list.
That's right.
So I think that was inspired, to be honest.
Yes.
And also it's lovely to see when you can find the things that you love doing, and it hasn't taken Alex that long to do that. I think some people it takes a lot longer. So I think that's also quite interesting. It doesn't have to take you forever. You don't need to sit and stew about what you're doing. So, that's really crucial. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. Got a frog in my throat there, but it'll go. It'll eventually hop off, like Veronica at the back there with her megaphone. So Joe, what's on the agenda for you for the rest of the week? Really, today is a Thursday.
Yes, so I've got some client work to finish today. I've got a networking meeting tomorrow. I've got a workshop this evening, which I'd forgotten all about, which I'm really quite looking forward to. And I'm taking the weekend off. I've done quite a bit because, as I said earlier, about the juggle between schooling and broadband and home Wi-Fi and and then all this other stuff with my dad having been unwell, I've been working evenings, weekends, just to try and keep steady and not move forward, really, running 100 miles an hour to stand still.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to take a couple of days out and do some reading. If the weather's good, I might go out and do a bit of work in the garden, some fresh air. That'll, perk things up a bit, I think.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Well, I'm going to hop off. I'm going to go and do some shopping, the mundane, ordinary stuff that needs to get done. So I'm going grocery shopping, which is very exciting. Then I'm going to see the hairdresser, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
And then I'm coming back for another meeting with another potential podcast guest. So we're going to have a chat about her appearing in a later episode of the podcast. And if I've still got any energy left after that, I shall get some more of my PowerPoint course recorded, because I'm quite excited about this course now, and I just want to get it out there. I've got quite a busy week next week with training delivery. Next week, I'm delivering a PowerPoint webinar, funnily enough, for IMA, the International Management Assistance Membership Organization. So Tuesday evening, I think that is. And that's quite late for me, because it's at 8 p.m. Central European time, which is 9 o'clock for me. So it'll start at 9. So I think I better try and take it easy on Tuesday. Fat chance of that, really, but we can hope. So I really want to get my course out there, and I've got to plan my books.
Are you cooking this weekend?
Well, we have guests on Friday night. So I do need to make chicken soup, because I've run out of chicken soup. I usually make a very big pot and it goes for a few weeks. But we've only got one couple coming, so it's not really very much. And funnily enough, I just took a chicken out of the freezer this morning, which needs to be cooked, which that's really not really cooking, is it? I mean, putting a roast chicken in the oven is fairly straightforward. And I'll do that tomorrow afternoon. And I found some goulash. So that will be lunch on Saturday. So I'm not cooking up a storm this weekend. I'm taking it a bit easy on the cooking front. I'm finding I'm actually quite busy, and I don't have as much time for fancy cooking at the moment. So we're also in the run up to Passover, I'm starting to look at using things up, because we have a different diet at Passover. We don't have any leavened products, but it's not just that we don't eat them, we don't have them in the house. So it's a case of using up whatever is in the cupboard. So I need to use up all the meals that because I batch cook. So I need to make sure that I've finished we've got for about 5 weeks from now to make sure, because what ends up when you get to this stage, I don't know about you and your freezer, but the things that are in the freezer are the things that I don't really want to eat. Those things that you put in the freezer because you can't bear to throw them out.
Yeah.
And there's enough for a meal.
I've got some things in my freezer. It's funny, but I looked at this yesterday when I was doing some meal planning, and I've got a couple of bags of stuff, and you're thinking, well, is that chili con carne? Is it bolognese? Is it stew? And it's all that kind of stuff where it's been there a little while, and the pen on the outside is kind of a bit smudged, so you can't really see what's in it. So there'll be some magical mystery meals in the next week or so, I think, for us.
So it's things like that. So that's why I found the goulash. So I thought, okay, we'll eat that, and this chicken, we'll eat this chicken, and then so I'm just trying to get ahead of myself, and I'll probably do some baking maybe this evening. David's going to watch the football, so I'll either record PowerPoint stuff, or I might make challah bread. I don't know. We'll see how I feel later. In fact, I might even have challah in the freezer, in which case I will defrost it, because that's the mood I'm in at the moment.
Yes, and that's good.
Right, listeners, I think that's enough of us and our waffling for today. Thank you very much for being with us. I'm so thrilled that Alex has been enjoying the podcast so much. It really does make me feel warm and fuzzy. And do let us know what you think of the podcast. And do remember to give us a little bit of a rating on any of the podcast players. It helps other people find the podcast and they can enjoy it too. So thank you very much. As ever, you can email me, Shelley at tomorrowsva.com, Joe at jlbbusinessconsulting.co.uk. I finally got it right. And you can find the Facebook page at Virtually Amazing. And everything is on my website, tomorrowsva.com. And we'll see you next week. You have been listening to Virtually Amazing, the podcast for virtual assistants with Shelley Fishel and Joe Brianti. We will be back with you again next week with yet another amazing episode. See you then.